circumstances, I want to look at it in terms of what it means to follow God. So if you join me in reading in Joshua chapter 6, we'll read from verses 1 through 11. Now Jericho was tightly shut up because of the Israelites. No one went out and no one came in. You're going to notice on the front of your bulletin, there's a little picture of what the walls of Jericho looked like. And as my son and I were looking at that together, we realized that to get into this town, there were probably only a few doors, just like we have only a few doors to come in and out. It was fighting men around the armed men in front of the army 7 times with priests blowing trumpets and collapse and will go up straight in. Take of the guard, the trumpets, but John commanded the people, do not circling it once. And the people says here, Joshua, the command that they were to the land. Both of the first, known as text, they go into of promised way of Genesis. The book of Deuteronomy literally means giving of the Lord, and the people, unlike a forefather, allowed to end. Similar way, they receive that of crossing the Red Sea over the Jordan. Have to learn how to follow in faith. God has called you to do, encounter a barrier that is overwhelmingly larger than you. As we look, we're not going to probably end up running into walls that we have to climb over unless you get locked out of your house or something like that. But in our world, we're going to encounter things that are very difficult. If you look at that front page, I want you to notice with me what those walls look like. If you look on the left side, there is the average height of an individual, let's say maybe 5'10", 6 foot. Next to him is this inclined or retaining wall, and then on top of that retaining wall is another wall. From there to there, we have 2 walls. In between this wall, there is an inclined area between the walls, and this is typically where people would live, most likely the poorer people. In fact, this is where Rahab's house was most likely located, in between these walls. And you notice what kind of a difficult thing it was to let the spies that came into the land that we read earlier into, how they would have to get down. In between this wall was this open area where people lived, and then you found the other inner wall, and then finally you would get into the city of Jericho. From the man standing at the bottom to the top, we have estimated that somewhere from 50 to 60 feet tall. That's quite a big thing. That's quite a thing. There's no simple way of getting a ladder or trying to climb. Even those individuals who are great master climbers in Yosemite, this is a challenging feat. And I wonder how many times we encounter some of those same circumstances. Maybe it's a financial circumstances. Time is coming. Done it. Attention, because it's easy. But X amount of energy, something worse, pressure. We may it comes to that I have to do it. These people to the task. And guess what? Clear instruction. First thing I noticed that he says to them, he wants to become the one victory. Before the first encounter, have delivered Jericho into your hand. I'm the one who's going to make this plan. And I want to encourage you when you encounter things that are overwhelming. Right? Either the older they, however, be the type of individual will learn 3 or 4 to things that are or different, obeying to get. I want you to bring this, and that's what are we to think? Obedience plan imagine what third dance around music really that for 6 makes sense. One first to God and all whoever will lose it again. Save something that could actually that many Jesus logic. How about this? Persecute with good. The list was God did not logic lesson, and the lesson I follow me before the to imagine of hearing water and the miracle from cross. You don't have to. And in between the Gideons are getting and they take you honor mother. His mother told him, your Psalm 7. I'll just read a portion to the word of God. She would say, giving Lord are radiant together, right? Precious also from so every city to the do any tax involves are directly involved by acting in the love gorilla, 100-pound gorilla. Since I have is what kind of and his people destroy the Canaan we have in Jesus. pound gorilla. We come to the God is a God here tells them to do. Were they like J.R. hobbits with wonderful past, and they were people that wars. There were no evil. Quite a dark, in fact. If I would live quite a culture, in Lord their God, later, and it makes. I was reading burned the body and actually smiled as the body burned, and they would say, as a child, let's be the people of Canaan, not evil. Well, in Genesis chapter 15 verse, only being a judge, he's being God. As he's given to Abraham, he gives Abraham a large picture. Inherit the giving you. That your will be strange, enslaved, mistreated for 400 years. That in slavery, this is serve. We read that. And he says this good old age, 16. Your will come here. Jacob, the sin of has not the Amalek being closely related to Canaanite. And so we clearly, even as it may be, these for their grace. Here, in our speech, in our notes, the use of structure, that word, destruction, ancient Near, for me to describe is to say that sports, Texas Rangers are playing the recently. The score 10-1. We would say got right obliterated, spanked. We would so many ways, similar ways. Not exactly that kind of language is often in Joshua himself, it says there were no left in the land. Individuals utterly destroyed that we have here. In chapter 14, Joshua asking Joshua for permission to drive out the Anak him again. So we might be able to say this more accurately, that the destruction language that we see here is not one of total obliteration, but one of that is more characterized by disabling the enemy. In fact, in Jeremiah chapter 9 and Jeremiah chapter 25, God uses these same words against his people Judah to say, I will utterly destroy them. And we would see here that that God is most likely using what we would commonly say hyperbole and exaggeration to make a point. In fact, Jesus uses that quite a bit. In the Gospel of Matthew, he says twice, if your hand offends you, he says, cut it off. If your eye causes you to sin, gouge it out. Are we to literally cut off our hands? We would imagine people, I wouldn't be able to play piano anymore. I wouldn't be able to see my wife if I had that situation. So we can see that God, this language to remind them that what is happening must be taken seriously. As such, the aim of God's command was not the obliteration of the wicked, but the obliteration of the wickedness. And we want to also, lastly, again, the 800-pound gorilla here. We must notice in the Old Testament that God often reminded the people of Israel how they were to act toward foreigners, how they were to act toward the aliens in there. In fact, the alien people were invited to enjoy what God was giving to Israel by coming into the covenant community. Specifically, we see the life of Rahab, who says, I believe, I'm going to follow your God, and she becomes this woman of faith who is included in the lineage of Jesus. So hopefully that helps you with this understanding of why God would do that. I want to close with this last section, verse 24 through 27, back in Joshua. Then they burned the whole city and everything in it, but they put the silver and gold and the articles of bronze and iron into treasury of the Lord's house. But Joshua spared Rahab the prostitute with her family and all who belonged to her because she hid the men Joshua had sent as spies to Jericho, and she lives among the Israelites to this day. And at that time Joshua pronounced this solemn oath, Cursed before the Lord is the man who undertakes to rebuild the city Jericho. At the cost of his firstborn son, he will lay its foundations. At the cost of his youngest, he will set up its gates. So the Lord was with Joshua, and his fame spread throughout the land. I want to talk about the importance of the devoted things. God says there are things that are not intended for them to enjoy. He says, take this gold, the silver, and bronze, crazy with it. Start thinking, oh boy, I'm going to make my wife a new ring. I'm going to put gold on my shoes. I'm going to make some gold Air Jordans. I'm going to get this stuff because in battle, aren't we supposed to be able to take what is rightfully ours because we won the victory? God says, no, I don't want you to do that. In fact, all these things belong to me. I need money. And this is my encouragement to you, friends. And in fact, sorry, immigrant. And on culture, spirit, the thing, simply for them. Deacon and amen. Would you pray a blessing upon you to leave?